The definition of digital detox is just a period of time offline, not connected to technology. Since 1960, we're 20% less active than we were in the 1960s, and I think we'll be about 35% less active by 2030. If we don't get enough exercise, then it shortens our life.
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dhanda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable.
Hey Colin, thank you for joining me today. I'm super excited because you are a fellow Brit and I am intrigued to know what superpower you're bringing to this particular episode.
So Paddy, the superpower I'd like to bring to the Superpower School today is the power of digital detox.
Nice, because you and I were speaking just before we kicked off and I was saying about my kids and how every day they come back from school and all I ever see them do is glued to that device. It's almost like it's a permanent fixture on their hand like this. So I am really intrigued to hear some of your tips on how we can have that digital detox today, but equally as adults, because I was in London the other day on the tube and everybody's glued again to their devices. So I think adults and kids, we're all the same. There's no point in me pointing the finger because I'm probably just as big a culprit as they are.
Funny thing is, it's not only trains, it's when you're in a restaurant and you've even got families and couples together and they're on their phones as well.
Do you know what, Colin? I saw a documentary a good 7-8 years ago, and it was about South Korea and how they had these digital detox camps and people were paying money, right, to give up their device for like 2 weeks or whatever it was. And I was laughing at it. I was thinking, why on earth would anyone need that? Like, can't they just put the phone down? But it seems to have got so much worse, even in sort of the Western countries now, because of all of this addictive social media that just seems to be sucking our energy and our attention.
It is. And we're going to have a whale of a conversation on some of those issues.
Oh, brilliant. And the irony of it is, I was running late for this podcast and I emailed you to say, Colin, I'm going to be late. But you'd already had your digital detox because you had switched off all your emails and you missed it. So that was really ironic because that's what we're talking about today. So Colin, could you tell me, how did you get into this specialism?
So how did I get into digital detox and digital well-being? Well, I've had a great career in technology. And I had the wonderful opportunity of working on many technology firsts. The first digital satellite links, the first digital cable links, some really amazing equipment that we find is normal today. And I worked for lots of other technology companies, but it all started when I was in my mid-30s, enjoying myself in London in the early 80s, I think it was. And I suffered stress. But of course, nobody talked about stress. Heart rate started to rise, got stars in my eyes, got dizzy, even passed out a couple of times. Now, this was serious because I had a mortgage to pay. I liked my job. I needed my job. And so after all the usual tests, I had decided I have to get fit. Now, I had this memory, and memory is a wonderful thing. It's not necessarily accurate, of being a brilliant swimmer. So I thought, I know what I'll do. Yeah, I'll go swimming because they've built one of these newfangled freshwater swimming pools in the town that you can swim in the river or a saltwater lake. And so I started swimming and I was terrible. 2 lengths and I was wrecked. But I had to do something because I'd reached a tipping point. I needed the job. I liked my job. I had mortgages. I had to do something. Anyway, so I started swimming more. I got fitter. And I thought, well, okay, I need to learn how to do these strokes properly. So I took lessons, 1.5 years, and then I started racing in masters swimming races. and I joined a triathlon club because they had a nice swimming slot. And I don't know how it happened, but I ended up doing triathlon. And I competed in 4 Ironman triathlons, which is this ridiculously silly one. But this whole process started to fascinate me with this mind-body connection, but what you can do by just thinking in a different way and how much opens up. So I'm really interested in the power of how you think and also the power of this connection between the mind and the body. Just simple things. If you're fit, understand what signals do you give off? And it was absolutely fun. And also, of course, your heart rate. I was going off races off the gun. My heart rate was going, so yeah, no problems at all. No stress problems at all. And then in about 8 years ago, I left my last corporate job and I got a coach and there was all these other jobs. And after a couple of months, I thought, you know what? I really don't want to do any of those things. I love technology. I love this psychology of the mind. And I noticed that I was getting attached to my smartphone like everybody else. And I went into the research behind that and I thought, wow, I can merge all these things together and do something I'm really passionate about and never retire. So yeah, that's how I came in. And in 2018, I created the Digital Detox Coach. So a digital detox, if you read the column press, the digital detox is like going away for a weekend or going away for 2 weeks in nature and not having a phone and all of those things. And yes, that's at one end. But the definition of the digital detox is just a period of time offline, not connected to technology. So it can be as short as 20 seconds. When you've been at your screen far too long, that sort of near vision thing, your eyes are starting to ache. You look up, you look away, you look at a plant, or you look in the distance and just rest your eyes. Or it can be, as we all should do, take a 10 to 15 minute break at regular intervals where we get up, we go to the coffee machine, we go to the water machine, or we walk in the garden if we're working at home, or go and talk to a colleague. So we have those regular breaks. So digital detox is the very short distance, short periods of time and the long periods of time. Most people imagine it's the longer weekends away, but it's actually the shorter periods that are the most important. And it's all about rest and recovery and working with your biological self, because we're amazing biological creatures. The power consumption of the human brain compared with a supercomputer, which has roughly the same raw calculating capacity, that will take 1 million times more power. And it can't even make the tea. It can't feed itself. We've evolved to be able to survive and move about on this planet. It's really difficult. The same as all the other animals. And it's incredibly difficult. And so when we've adapted, and lots of other animals have adapted to be able to do that amazing thing, we've created technology in air-conditioned rooms with enough electricity to keep them going, fans blowing. We even have to adapt how we talk to them because they need special programs or special interfaces. They live in a sort of a simplified world. Whereas you and I, if we go outside, anything could happen. So we have to live in a very complicated world, and we're part of that world. We've got millions of bacteria and viruses in our stomachs to help us digest food. So it's that connection between the body, the mind, and everything else that's really important. And that's digital detox is an enabler. It means when you're online, it's like being in a sweet shop. Now, I like chocolate. And I like to tidy up chocolate. It's just one of those things. So if I'm in a sweet shop and there's all these chocolate bars, you know what? I'm going to be going into those chocolate bars. Well, it's the same as being online. And we've got all those apps, and those apps are being designed incredibly well. And okay, they use behavioral psychology to keep us engaged and to stop us thinking and getting us to react and all the rest of it. But unless I come offline, I don't have the time for my brain to start really thinking about what I might want to do. Should I have a nutritious meal instead of eating something or looking at my laptop? Should I do some exercise, even if it's only walking? Should I go and really communicating with other people, because I know that human connection is the one main thing that's going to keep us happy in life. Because it's security for a herd animal like ourselves, we have to have that safety of connection to other people. So digital detox is an enabler for all the other things we need to do.
And Colin, what does the research tell us about how big a problem this is for people? I'll give you an example. I have glasses, as do you, and my cousin's an optician. So I go and visit him maybe every 6 or 7 months for my regular eye test. And he always says the same thing to me. He goes, your eyes are very dry, and he's always recommending eye drops. And I'm like, oh my God, like, why is that? Is it my food, my diet? Like, what's going on? And he went, I know you do a lot of screen work. And he said, I guarantee you it's because you're not blinking enough. Because the screen is forcing me to keep my eyes focused and I forget to blink, which is it's an everyday human thing, right? No one teaches us how to blink, but it feels like we've forgotten now with all of this digital stuff around us. So from a health perspective and just general epidemic of digital devices, like how bad are things in your opinion?
So if we just take the simple example of eyes and eye strain, of looking at screens, if we spent all day looking at a book in exactly the same way and always looking at something close to us, then our eyes will get tired, our eyes will get dry. So yes, it is the screen, because we are focusing the eyes on a very short distance for a long period of time, instead of what we were evolved to do is always look around, always change. So just that simple example of the eyes and resting the eyes. Now, there's a funny thing that most companies have forgotten about, and it's called the Display Screen Equipment Regulation. And it came in, I'm going to get the 1980s, when screens first started. And they put an onus on companies to ensure that all the employees had regular breaks, screen breaks. And also, they also had that if somebody had to work on the screen and they needed glasses, then the company should provide free eye tests. So before this, the internet, before smartphones and all those other things, both in the UK and Europe, there were regulations that said, do you know what, looking at the screen all day isn't the best thing. So companies, you should arrange breaks in that activity. So the research goes back a really long way on looking at screens, but there are lots of other unintended consequences. So we invent technology to make things easier. A washing machine is brilliant, kettles and all those other things. And really, our smartphones and laptops are in the same vein. So since 1960, we're 20% less active than we were in the 1960s. And I think we'll be about 35% less active by 2030, which isn't so far away. So what does that mean? Well, we have a sedentary lifestyle. What does it mean when we're not moving around, when that's what we're designed to do? Well, if we don't get enough exercise, then it shortens our life. The Alzheimer's Society are recommending that exercise is the thing that puts back dementia and all of those other things. But there's loads of chronic illnesses. And one of the unintended consequences of having a more sedentary lifestyle, which has been made worse, not caused by, but made worse by our smartphones and screens, is that all of a sudden we have to think about doing something we used to do naturally. And And because we're going into the AI world, not only is our technology making life easier, but it's starting to do some of the thinking for us, which is a really new thing. Now, we all know what happens when we use sat-navs. We listen to the sat-nav, it says turn left, turn right, go across the roundabout, you get from A to B. But the research shows that we really don't remember how we got there, compared with someone who was using a map. Someone using a map and looking around had much greater spatial awareness. So that's an example of outsourcing skills. Now, because I'm old, I remember having calculators for the first time at school. Before that, I remember how to learn to do it without a calculator. Because it is not required now. And that's just a simple example. But if we outsource too many of our skills, and we don't have the experience of those things, then we won't have those memories. We won't have the experience of those memories. So when we're trying to solve problems or be creative, we always look inwards. And our unconscious brain is making all these weird associations all the time. And then when it thinks it's got something, it will pop up into conscious memory. And all of a sudden, something will seem obvious, apart from the fact it wasn't obvious before you had that thought, because the unconscious has put all those things together. So if you have less experiences and less knowledge, then you've got less things to associate. And so one of the biggest dangers with AI is because even the relatively simple generative AI that hallucinates all over the place is going to make some incredible things, hard things, easy. And that's the nature of technology and technology advances. And we're all going to get lazy because we all find it difficult to motivate, just like exercise, just like eating healthy, just like walking in nature and all of these other good things. We'll say, oh yeah, it's too easy, let the AI do it. But we have less things. So if I was talking to my younger self now, I would say, don't take the easy option. Everything that's worthwhile has got to be hard. But don't do what people do at the beginning of every year, set the New Year's resolution and set the target too high. It's all about marginal gains and incremental steps. So just do something that's hard a little bit every day, like you were exercising. But this time you're exercising your mind. And then over a period of time, you look back and think, oh, wow, I learned that new skill, or I learned that new thing. So AI is really, outsourcing our knowledge is going to be a real challenge. Because if we don't have those experiences, you can imagine, and I'm a great science fiction lover, everyone's looking, well, what do we do now? The power's gone off. I can't talk to my AI assistant. What am I going to do?
I've already started becoming that lazy guy because every time now someone says, oh, can we just knock up a template for this? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And I'm straight onto AI and ChatGPT. And I'm like, hey, just knock this up for me quick. Like, this is what I need. So my brain's not having to think. And I can just see it. Like, even my daughter the other day, like, she's probably the most anti-AI person I know, if I'm honest. And she loves creativity. She's a creative. And she's always saying to me, Dad, oh, I don't agree with all this AI stuff. And it's stealing people's creativity, especially when you see the images, and it's fed all these images from really creative people, and then it's mashing up and coming up with new stuff. But even she said to me the other day, she was like, oh yeah, Dad, I was doing some brainstorming with ChatGPT. So again, technology is becoming this co-pilot, as Microsoft put it.
Yes. But that's why you have to digital detox, in the sense you have to leave the switch on and then go to another environment. And in my TEDx talk, which I did last year in the US with a colleague of mine, it was on identity. Are we losing our identity to technology? But the end of it was all about being able to disconnect and to go into a place in your home or your apartment where you've got no online devices, no smart watches, no smart speakers. And you've just got an area, and in the area you might have a notebook, you might have real books, you might have do some artwork, do anything, doesn't really matter. Music is fantastically. And just so that you have the time to think and to be with other people. Digital detox, if you go out with your mates or your friends and everyone's looking at their phone, or if you're with your children and let's say you're looking at your phone, well, that's saying to the other person, and we all know this is true because we've all felt this, it's saying, I'm not important. Whatever's on that phone must be more important than I am. And you get that rejection all the time. So you said earlier on about children and parents. So parents have got to lead by example in the environment of the home. You can't do this, I'm telling you what's right, but this is work, it's important to me. There aren't any studies that I found on this effect with smartphones, but there are tons of studies on smoking, where parents smoke, the children are more likely to smoke. Because it's the home environment, it's what you grew up to. It doesn't mean that you will smoke, because my father smoked and I didn't smoke, but you're more likely. So the research on smoking is quite clear on that. I haven't found any research on smartphones, but it feels like it will be the same thing. So yeah, setting examples, and that's really hard for parents, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we're just older children.
Yeah, you're right. I often say to people, I'm not really sure what I want to be when I grow up. And they just look at me like, what on earth? Anyway, that's another conversation for another day. And Colin, in terms of then, if the listeners sat at home thinking about, well, how can I make a start on this digital detox? Like, what are some simple ways that you can start to do this? You mentioned there about your TEDx talk, which sounds amazing. I'm going to definitely check that out. That, have a place in your house that you almost can walk in and there is no distraction. But like, what are some of the other tips that you would have for people?
So the thing to remember is that being online, using a smartphone is easy. Everything else is going to be harder. Okay. If you think of it like exercise is harder than not exercising. So when you're online, you create lots of habits that mean you do things over and over again. So what you've got to do is start creating habits, offline digital detox habits. But you have to start small. You have to start with easy, small steps. And you have to do it regularly for at least 60 days, because habit formation takes a long while. Before a habit is formed, we have to consciously think about doing something. And if we have to consciously think, it's using resources, it's using our willpower, we might be tired, and you know what? We might not go and do the exercise or that thing. So that's why there's small steps. If you can attach it to something else. So for example, if you go for a lunch break, or if you go for a coffee break, or if you go for breakfast tea, don't take your phone. Attach that activity with not taking your phone. Lots of people have meal times with families. You say, look, it's a no-phone environment. And you get agreement that's going to be the case. So you start small. Now, I created something called Digital Detox Couch to 5K. Now, for your viewers in the UK, certainly there is a Couch to 5K, which is a National Health Service app, which gets you off the couch to run on 5K to take advantage of park run. And park runs all around the world, apart from those countries that you have to have a doctor's certificate, which is France, to my knowledge, but they're in the US and everywhere else. And so I created something similar. And in there are some challenges. Now, there's a great challenge, which is just one thing challenge. So if you want to take control of your smartphone, we're in the UK, we're going to check the weather on because it's a national pastime. But that's your one thing. So if you say, I'm going to check the weather, that's the only thing you can do. And you can check the weather, but you mustn't check your emails or anything else. And you have to come off, and then 10 minutes later, you can do another thing. You don't do it all the time. You just decide which is your detox challenge times of the day or days of the week, and you just do that one thing. And if you fail, don't beat yourself up. Even give your smartphone a name and say, do you know what? You got the better of me that time, but next time I'm going to succeed. So there's a just one thing challenge, which is quite hard. Separating yourself from your phone last thing at night and first thing in the morning is really important. So last thing at night, it's the same as watching horror movies and things like that. You're overstimulating your mind. The jury's out on blue screens at the moment, but it's the overstimulation that's the thing that's going to affect your sleep. Now, as biological animals, we've evolved to sleep. It's the single most important thing we have to do. So getting enough good quality sleep is really important. I've reframed, when I do a talk to professional people, I've reframed it and I'm saying, look, your career, your work is like an endurance event. And so that requires training. If you've got something big coming up the next day, you really need to get a good night's sleep like an athlete. If your brain's getting tired, take a break like an athlete. So sometimes you have sprints, but it's an endurance event. So I do the crossover between the way that athletes are in touch with their bodies and say, well, your work is just as important. And why wouldn't you want to be your best at work? Or why wouldn't you want to be the best with your family? And reframe the question. So sleep's really important. So last thing at night, at least an hour before, so you don't get all that overstimulation. And then in the morning, now I agree, you have to solve the alarm clock problem, but you can do it. I go on these, they call it sad lights, and the lights start to come on and it plays bird sounds and all the rest of it. I don't need it in the summer. And the mobile phone is actually downstairs now. And the reason why you do that is because if you pick up your smartphone to switch the alarm off, you're so tempted to just catch up. But the danger of catching up is if you look at social media or news, that sets your agenda for the day. That sets your feelings for the day. Whereas if you've had a good night's sleep, you might be positively thinking, you know what, I'm going to do that thing today, or I'm going to go and see that person today, or I'm going to do these other things. But as soon as you start taking in the external stimulus of social media and news, and the news is always doom and gloom, because it just sells. It's just one of those things. There'll be tragedies all over the place. And on social media, you're rubbish because everyone's doing so much better. So another one of the challenges, the bookend challenge, which is to create that space. And there's lots of other challenges, and it ends up, it's a 9-week program, it ends up where, you know what, your smartphone's back where it should be. It's an amazing tool that you can decide when to use it. It's a free download, and you don't have to put your email in.
Oh, I love that. And you're practicing what you preach there, because by removing all that email stuff and everything else, it's not encouraging people to then go check their emails for the download link. And yeah, because that could then trigger another sort of addiction to your gadget for a little while, couldn't it?
It's the paradox of being in digital wellbeing, because if you look at the digital wellbeing space, they've got websites, they've got seminars, they've got all these things, they're collecting analytics, they're collecting emails. After a while, they become part of the problem rather than the solution. So I try and pare back on those things, because otherwise, how would I be credible?
Based on your research and any sort of scientific studies that you've seen, could you share any of the interesting stuff that you've come across in this space?
So there's a great professor called Gloria Mark, and she has been studying attention for a very long time. But she's been studying it, she started off in the university environment, but she went into real environments and she looked at information workers. And so in her research, one of the greatest things is that our attention span has reduced from, I think it's around about 2.5 minutes, 10 years ago, to 47 seconds, where we'll naturally switch to another screen. But we don't, and if we switch our attention from one thing to another thing, we think, oh, well, that's not a problem because we can multitask. Okay, so neuroscience tells us the brain isn't a parallel computer. it can do one task at a time using the same cognitive resources. So yes, of course, you can walk and you can look at your smartphone. Now, you will bump into people more often because there is an overlap in cognitive resources. And the reason's quite simple. We've got millions of neurons. But if you imagine it as an orchestra, it can only play one tune at a time. And if you wanted to play another tune, it has to stop and play another tune. And because there are different frequencies in the brain. And that explanation came from a lovely book called The Memory Illusion. And I just love that explanation. Anyway, so nobody can multitask. We just switch very quickly. And Gloria Mark's research says the cost of multitasking is increased stress. And she, in one of her experiments, she had chest heart rate monitors. And I was particularly interested in this because it was basically the time between each heartbeat varies. And the reason is if we have to do something suddenly, we're more able to do it. But if we are stressed, the rate between each of the heartbeats it becomes narrower and they become all the same. And so she used that as one of the measurements of stress in her experiments. And the other thing she said was, have you noticed in TV adverts, modern TV adverts, the screen is always shifting very quickly. So if you see a scene, you see a person, a room, a car, someone getting out of the car, they're in a room, they're drinking coffee, and that's all to keep us engaged. Now we've evolved to be easily distracted. It's a survival skill because tiger over there, you really do need to know about it. You need to know about it really quickly. So we've evolved to be distracted. So we've learned how to focus our attention. How many years did it take to learn to read and write at school? Many years. And that's really training our attention. So digital detox is also about reclaiming your attention and your attention span. And reading books, physical books with no distractions, is a way of training your attention. Meditation, of course, is another way. But here's the thing. Attention is like a spotlight. We focus on something, which means we're not focusing on lots of other things. We can only remember and experience the things that we're focusing on. So if we spend most of our time focusing on our screens and what's on our smartphones, then we're not focusing on all the other things. We're not focusing on the world around us. We're not focusing on the people around us. We're not experiencing those things. And if we're not experiencing those things, we're not creating memories. So where your focus and attention goes, your energy goes. So coming back to digital detox, it's attention and attention. Attention management is, when you're at work, it's attention management, not time management.
Again, I love that. And I know exactly the lady you're talking about because I've been reading her book, Attention Span, and the amount of research and resources that she has reviewed to put that book together is incredible. When you look at the back and you see all of the referencing, it's just mind-blowing.
Yeah. But do you know the best one? She convinced a company to switch off the emails for one day, and then she measured attention spans and it went up. So the fact that we've got email, it has a cognitive load. It draws us and it draws our attention. In the same way that if you have a smartphone in your pocket or on your table, there's other research with students taking exams or doing tests. The students with no phones do better than the students who have a phone somewhere close to them, because it drains our cognitive resources, even though we don't realize it.
Yeah, and imagine all the damage it does to relationships, as you mentioned before, when you're out with your friends or even loved ones and you're getting your phone out every 5 minutes, like how much of that conversation is really going into those minds and those heads. This is why I love podcasting so much, because for me, I get to sit here and I get to really listen. I've got no distractions around me. There's not like I'm going to be looking at my phone, and I'm focused on what my guest is telling me. And I find I get so much out of these conversations, way more than perhaps if I go and watch someone speaking at a conference, because my mind's probably all over the place. It's wandering in and out. And because they're not speaking to me individually, I don't feel that same connection. And so it just makes such a difference when you do give someone your attention and that focus. For sure, I totally agree.
Because in order for us to give meaning, we have to take whatever's being said. And what I mean by that is that it's the words, but it's my actions, it's my facial expressions, it's the tone, it's all of that information. And we take that internally, and there are things called mirror neurons, and we have to feel those things. If we see a bird flying, what we're actually doing is some of those neurons are imagining what it's like to fly so that we can have that meaning. And the latest thing in consciousness is the hard problem inside. It's the hard problem. But there's a lovely book called Being You by Anne Hillseth. It's a really interesting read. But what we see is a controlled illusion. Colors exist to us as humans because we convert things into colors because it helps us recognize shapes and other things. Other animals will see the world differently. Whales and dolphins, like bats, have incredible audio sensory capabilities. So their picture of the world is made up of audio. My dog, your dog, if you've got a dog, predominantly sees in two colors. But sense of smell, I don't know, 100,000 times better than ours. But also it's got a time dimension. So when it sniffs something, it can relate to when that smell was there or how long ago it was. So their picture of the world is different. Ours have infrared, so you can't hide from those if you're a mouse. So we have to appreciate that this is a controlled illusion. And and then what we've done with technology is we've engineered it so it's good enough. But it's a subject. It's a bit like a bit of history. There used to be VHS tapes. So you could record a program, but you could never really record from one of those because you degrade it each time you do it. So the online world is absolutely amazing. It's the most cleverest thing we've ever done in history so far. But it's a facsimile of the real world. And we shouldn't get too carried away by our own cleverness.
That's fascinating. I've never thought about it from that perspective when you talk about nature and how different animals see the world. Because, we've got a dog. We bought a little puppy. He's like a year and a half now. And all he ever does is sniff everything. And we always say he's blind as a bat because I'll throw the ball to him in the park and he'll just completely miss when it's fallen. And I'm like, it's right next to you, man. Just get the ball. And he'll just run off somewhere else. So it is incredible how we just assume every being on this earth is just like us. And we take a lot of things for granted, I think.
But also we're not the same. And do you remember that thing on the internet, which is called That Dress? And some people saw it in one color and some people saw it in another color. And the explanation, this is a bit of a spoiler, how we see colors and how we interpret shadows depends on our experience. And the reason why different people interpreted slightly different ways was they had slightly different experiences. And that accounts for the fact, because they are specially designed so it would be on that sort of tipping point. But it's based on your experiences, how you will interpret shadows. And there are some wonderful illusions of things changing color based on where they are in shadows. And of course, we're not all the same. There's a term called neurodiversity now. It's a much better term because in the past, people thought normal, not normal. Now we've got a bit cleverer with science. We know that it's normal to have neurodiversity in species. And that's a really important survival element. So if you're partially sighted or blind, you still see the world, but you're not seeing it in exactly the same, using the same senses. You're creating that controlled illusion in a different way.
I had a guest on this podcast who, unfortunately, he had an explosion blow up in his face, an IED, because he was in the US military, and he had lost his sight and his hearing. And he's reached out to me to say, Paddy, can I be a guest on your podcast? And in my mind, I'm like thinking the obvious, like, hang on a minute, how are we going to communicate? Because no sight, no sound. But I have to tell you, it's one of my most downloaded episodes in terms of the 130 odd episodes I've got, because he had such an extraordinary story, first of all, but it was so inspiring. And he's a sensation on TikTok because he cooks, and he was a chef in the army prior to his accident, and actually prior to the last role he did there, which was as a bomb disposal expert. And so he's always had this passion for cooking, and now he brought that to the forefront. He's got this other superpower where he's able to really appreciate smell and taste. It's amplified all of those other aspects.
Neuroplasticity in the brain, and that it's able to strengthen some parts of the brain in favor of other parts. And we do this all the time. And it's an amazing thing. Now, coming back to AI, of course, AI uses simplified models. It looks at the data that is given to train on. That data it's given to train on is a fraction of the data that's ever existed, that we've not recorded, that's not really recorded in a certain way. So it's missing data. So it's making all its decisions on missing data, on the data that it's got, but not on the data that it's missed. And because it doesn't have a self, it doesn't know, because it's calculating. It doesn't know that it's missing all of these things. And if you then say, well, what about the future of humanity? The future of humanity is on this neurodiversity, this creativity, being more in touch with the whole of living on this earth, as opposed to a simplified model. And that's why we should, I wouldn't say boo to the goose when I was younger. I was shy and all the rest of it. And it always give myself some advice now. I say, talk to loads of people, read loads of strange stuff in science books and stuff like that. Just open up your mind, get all these things into your mind, because you never know when that snippet of information might be interesting. It now transpires that there's scientific projects to try and identify the language that whales use. It's got to the point where there's an acceptance that whales are really intelligent and that they have this idea of self, and they might even have their own names, and they communicate. But we're not clever enough to know. Ironically, AI is being used to help with that. And that's really one of the good uses. There's lots of good uses of AI, and it's one of the good uses. But we're often restricted by our own intelligence or held back by our own stupidity, so we don't think things. And there was a great thing that said, well, if an animal doesn't recognize itself in a mirror, then of course it can't be as clever as that. Well, yes, but if it's using smells to create its world, or sound, or anything, well, of course it's not going to recognize itself in a mirror.
So, Colin, we're fast approaching time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, so I'm going to ask you one of my favorite questions of all. If I could give you one superpower to abolish something in the world of work, what would that be? And we're going to do it for 24 hours, because we're tech people. We like to do a pilot run before we go fully blown into the solution.
Okay. So I would like to abolish, for most people, because there will always be exceptions, but for most people, the idea that you can be contacted from work at any time of day. I'd like to abolish it so that you can have work and life. And the laugh of it is, that you're unconsciously working on the problems of work when you're doing lots of other things. So you're actually, that's part of being productive, is to be able to do other things. So yeah, I'd like to abolish this idea that you can be contacted outside work, apart from those on call and emergency service and all the rest, because we'd all be in trouble if those people couldn't be contacted.
Colin, that's just sparked a story. I'm going to tell you the story. When I was working for BT as a young graduate, and it was probably a year or two after I graduated, so I was about 2 years into my career, I was on holiday in Canada visiting my sister-in-law and her family. And I foolishly took my BlackBerry with me, because we had BlackBerries then, those chunky phones with lots of buttons on them that weren't touchscreen. And I checked emails whilst I was on holiday. And there was this one from my senior management saying, call us now. It's an emergency. I was like, oh my God, I got a call. And I was of the mindset then, as probably a lot of young people when they start their careers, that they've got to respond to work no matter what. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. And so I foolishly called and they said, oh, the project's gone into code red. It's completely blowing up. And you're the only guy that knows this part of the system, because I was a techie software engineer. And I was told to pretty much pack my bags and come back immediately. And the company were going to pay for my ticket and all that good stuff, which, you know what, it's fine. But I had to leave my wife there because she was going to continue. And I had to come home early from that holiday. And you know what? That taught me never, ever look at emails for work whilst you're on holiday. So to this day now, unless it's absolutely something that someone has told me, this is going to happen whilst you're on leave, like, please look out for this one message, I refuse to look at my phone now, especially email. I also now do detox from social media when I'm on holiday with the family. So that's another thing I've done. So yes, I totally agree. Let's do it. We got to do it. For sure.
It's like room 101. What do we want to put into the bin?
I think I need one. I should have like a little bin with a Superpowers sort of lightning bolt on it, and we throw it in there, and that's it. And some smoke comes out or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So thank you so much for that, Colin. And if people want to get in touch with you and find out more about the great work that you do, how can they do that?
So I'm into digital detox and I'm into digital wellbeing. And of course, I've got a website because we have to live in the modern world. So go to the website. It's www.thedigitaldetoxcoach.co.uk. There are free resources. They're like the couch to 5K. Download it, have a go. If some things work for you, then great. Send me a message, say this works. If some things didn't work for you, I also want to know, because I can improve it. It can be tweaked. But yeah, so yeah, go to the website.
Well, Colin, thank you so much. And folks, I'll include the links in the show notes so you can check out Colin's amazing TED Talks and his website as well. Please do check that out, because I think we all need a bit of detox now and again. And it sounds like the perfect way to start that journey without just completely stopping everything in one go, because I'm sure that would be quite difficult for a lot of us. So let's do that for sure. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
No, thank you for having me.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.